Okay, so what exactly is the knight supposed to be good at? I'm confused, and not because of my sexuality for a change, no, it just feels like Behaviour made another killer that could do everything, decided in testing that maybe that was a little too strong, and pre-nerfed him to the point where he's not very good at anything. The Knight fundamentally is a lockdown killer, similar to the Artist, Trapper, or Hag, where you're supposed to excel at either defending an area or making loops incredibly unsafe for survivors. Now, the Knight theoretically could do both of these incredibly well, but in practice fails miserably at both. On one hand, you have an ability that can shut down every loop in the game, but gets countered by pulling a my dad and just leaving. On the other hand, you have an oppressive camper / gen defender who loses his power for 20 odd seconds every time someone touches your no-no square. Now, the killers I mentioned beforehand all technically have these problems, but the mechanics of their powers make these weaknesses nowhere near as impactful. Sure, if you see an artist setting birds, you can leave, but she's still mobile while setting up and has full sight of you. The Hag definitely suffers from survivors harassing a web, but it usually costs them a health state to do so, and you can reset your traps immediately at very minimal costs to you. And if we're really comparing a brand new killer who spawns a whole ass extra dude to one of the worst ones in the game, no offense Trapper mains, we've got a problem. Combining the joke that is DBD's AI pathfinding, the numerous bugs that infest his power, and 3 dipshits that are at best underwhelming lead to a lot of situations where you're better off just not using your ability. The detection on the guards is about as consistent as my upload schedule, and even when they do ping a survivor, they move at the pace of a comatose 85-year-old grandmother being thrown in the opposite fucking direction. With the exception of the assassin, who moves at 4.4 meters per second, your guards move microscopically faster than survivors and give them a head start, which means that if your survivors aren't playing with the Wiimote, they're almost always going to outrun them. Now, yes, you could absolutely use your power at loop to put survivors between a rock and a sharp place, but not only are you locked in place while you birth a son, survivors can see when you're doing this and have more than enough time to leave the loop and chain into the next one, leaving you without a power and a massive disappointment. Mazel tov, it's a burden. You can also try to use your power to intercept survivors and place a guard in their path, but again, survivors can see where you're going to drop off your child and just run the other way, whilst you have nothing but audio to go off of as to where that survivor is. This power just isn't worth it in most anti-loop situations. So what about camping, or holding a 3-gen? This is definitely his strongest playstyle, given the fact that his guards are still more than capable of harassing survivors off gens or proxying a hooked survivor, but this has 2 major flaws. 1. We already established that your guards are incapable of catching a survivor on their own, so all you're really doing is stalling unless you counterproductively commit to a chase and give up the very thing you're trying to defend. And 2. Guards immediately drop their chase and disappear if a survivor starts the unhook animation, meaning that they can't actually face camp for you. This leads to a playstyle where you end up harassing generators with your minions, whilst you yourself face camp a survivor to death, or stalemate a game with regression perks and an impossible 3-gen where nobody's actually dying, but nothing's getting done. This is incredibly frustrating to play against, because it's not really that strong, it's just fucking annoying. Eventually survivors will either make a mistake and give you a down, or you'll commit to a chase out of sheer boredom and let survivors power through a gen. It's just not fun. And it's even worse in solo queue, where survivors don't have the communication to distract your guards and deal with a 3-gen like this. Congratulations, Behaviour! You somehow made another killer that both sides of your community can hate. Real talk though? I actually find the Knight to be a lot of fun to play in concept. His power essentially being a multitasking outlet makes DBD feel more like a strategy game than the usual point and stab adventure, which makes it even more frustrating to know that the only effective way to play him is incredibly unfun for both sides of the match. His power is so watered down that it feels like I'm practicing homeopathy, and it's sad to me because the potential for a fun and engaging killer is clearly there, it's just been neutered to the point of impotence. So how do we fix this? Firstly, on the survivor satisfaction side, the Knight shouldn't be able to set guards within a certain radius of a hooked player, because whilst Larry, Mo, and Curly can't effectively camp, you certainly can, all the while still applying pressure to the map with your power, leaving a very small window for survivors to go for the unhook. I'd say anywhere between 12 to 20 meters of a hooked player is fine, as it doesn't neuter the strategy for high level play, but still gives solo queue survivors a chance. The knight himself needs a lot of love, but strictly from the numbers side, we could tweak a few things here to make him a bit more fun to play. Firstly, the knight's gonna have to be a 4.4 killer for this to make sense, because we want to make the guards a touch more viable and worth using without breaking the knight in half. The Carnifex currently moves at 4.1 meters per second and chases for 24 seconds, making him a really good harass tool, but this also leaves you without your power for that duration. And being that he's so slow, survivors can kind of just run away from him. I think this could be bumped up to 4.2 meters per second, making him at least a minor threat, and give the knight the ability to recall the Carnifex from a chase, adding to the multitasking aspect of your power and preventing survivors from holding it hostage. The assassin should move at 4.6 meters per second, with a brief chase of 12 seconds still allowing survivors the chance to outloop him, but making him an actual threat that you can't just W key away from. I'm hesitant to do this, but with the knight moving at 4.4 and the pathfinding still being a joke, I think this buff should be fine. The jailer, I would say, is perfectly okay being a 4.1 speed killer, as his job isn't really to chase, more so to be a looming annoyance, but I do think that for this guard specifically, survivors shouldn't be able to see its alert radius, because as it stands, he's super easy to avoid, and thusly makes him more of a waste to use in this manner, as it costs you your power for 24 seconds. I think that having a silent patroller that can get the jump on survivors might be an interesting gimmick, and at the very least will give the jailer a little bit more viability. On a side note, I don't think this is possible, but giving the jailer the ability to pick up and hook survivors would be pretty cool and make sense thematically. And that's it. That's all I think the knight needs to be in a good spot without turning him into an oppressive anti-loop killer and trying to fix his more campy aspect. I've seen a few people try to argue that the guard should be able to apply gen regression perks, but being able to apply eruption or call a brine at a distance kind of breaks DBD's balance even further than it already is. So yeah, let's not do that. I do think that it would be fine to give the guards the 2.5% regression on kick that killers get, but let me know what you think in the comments. Is the knight underwhelming, oppressive, smash or pause? Oh, and while you're down there, feel free to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Apologies for not really animating the subtitles all the way through this time, but I wanted to get this video out ASAP, and I think we can save the max effort editing for the less ranty videos, but once again, let me know what you think of this style. Huge shout out to all my patrons, Mooglemoon, Matcha Seed, Rollin Wolfheart, RDST Thunder, and Snowty. You're all a fucking chat, and we appreciate you. If you want to support me on Patreon, there's a link down below. Don't know why you would, but if you do, thank you for letting me do this as my job. You're fucking amazing. No parasocial relationships, so I can't say I love you. Okay, thanks, bye.